Hi, my name is Odessa, and last week, at my father's wedding anniversary, they hid me behind a curtain. Not metaphorically, literally. They said it was for my comfort, but as I watched my stepmother raise a toast to her only daughter, I realized this wasn't an oversight, it was execution. I wasn't just forgotten, I was erased. But the worst part? They smiled while doing it. What happens when a family rewrites your name out of history and still expects you to stay quiet? It started with a phone call I wasn't supposed to get. I was standing by the window, sipping tea, when Marilyn called. Her voice came through warm and familiar, but with an edge of hesitance I hadn't heard before. "Just checking if you need help with your dress for the party, Miss Odessa," she said, as if we'd spoken about it already. My fingers tightened around the ceramic cup. "What party?" There was a pause, a beat too long. "The anniversary tomorrow," she answered quickly, almost too quickly. "Mr. Ellis and Mrs. Vera's big celebration. 30 years, you know." Of course I knew. I'd seen the local papers touting it as the event of the season. What I hadn't seen was an invitation. I let her words hang in the air for a moment, unsure whether to press or let it slide. "I must have missed the invite," I said calmly, though my heart thudded with a familiar ache. Marilyn hesitated again. Maybe it went to the wrong address." I smiled tightly. "Maybe." "Mistakes happen," I said. Her reply came quietly, like a whisper she didn't want heard. "Mistakes don't forget your name, honey." After the call ended, I stood motionless. I scrolled through the family group text, brimming with photos of the estate being decorated, snapshots of Vera and Callista holding wine glasses with perfectly white smiles, captions like, "Almost ready," and "Countdown to 30." Not a single mention of me. I sat down, opened my laptop, and booked a flight. I told myself I was doing it for my father. He'd raised me, flawed, quiet, but present. Surely he didn't know I'd been left out. In my suitcase, I packed the emerald necklace my mother left me, tucked into a cloth pouch, the same one she wore in their old wedding photo. She wasn't part of this new marriage, but I needed her close. On the flight, I watched clouds blur past and tried not to replay old Christmas mornings I'd spent alone, holidays where my name didn't make the dinner prayer list. I clenched my jaw against the rush of memories. This time, I wouldn't stay quiet. I wouldn't stay home. Not showing up is what they wanted. So I did the opposite. Charleston greeted me with that southern spring warmth that clung to the skin. The Rosemore estate stood tall, like always. White columns, trimmed hedges, a place built to be photographed. Luxury cars lined the driveway. Valets bustled around. I stepped out of my cab in a plain blue dress, heels too low for the occasion. A planner holding a clipboard scanned a list as I approached. "Name, please?" she asked without looking up. "Odessa Sinclair," I answered. Her pen stopped. I'm sorry, I don't seem to have you on the list. Were you added last minute?" I shook my head. "I'm the daughter." That made her blink. "Of Ellis Sinclair." Her face froze a moment, then recovered into a plastic smile. "Oh, I see. Well, Mrs. Vera handled most of the guest list. We have a small overflow area near the service entrance for family who prefer privacy. Would that be all right?" I nodded once. They gave me a guest tag. No name. Just a pink sticker with the number 74. I was led along the side of the estate, past the flower delivery trucks and caterer vans, to a narrow garden gate that opened to the back. I walked through the maze of trimmed lavender bushes and into the tented reception area. Gold-rimmed name cards sat at every table. The Callaways, Mr. and Mrs. Davenport, Senator Langford, but none with mine. I circled once, then twice. A young server finally noticed and asked if I needed help. "I'm looking for my seat." He looked down at his sheet, then blinked. "You can sit near the garden exit. I think that's what Mrs. Vera intended." I nodded. "Of course." I passed the table where my father was chatting animatedly with a group of men in dark suits. He didn't see me, or maybe he did and chose not to. I sat down in the far corner where the breeze caught the edge of the tent. My chair wobbled slightly. The centerpiece was wilted. Across from me, on every table, was a glossy booklet titled The Sinclair Legacy, 30 Years of Grace. I flipped it open. Photo after photo of Ellis and Vera, of Callista as a child, of ribbon cuttings and yacht parties. No photos of me, no mentions, no footnote. I glanced up just as my father passed by, with a flute of champagne. He walked within arm's reach, eyes straight ahead. I reached into my purse. Not for the lipstick I wouldn't need, but for my phone. The sun dipped lower as the sky softened into amber. The clinking of glass and swelling strings from the quartet floated through the tented garden. I hadn't moved from my chair, not because it was comfortable, it wasn't, but because I didn't know where else I was allowed to go, or rather, where they'd feel okay with me being seen. That's when the boy appeared, barely 20, with a headset looped around his ear and a clipboard held too tightly. He smiled like someone who still believed smiling could fix things. "Miss Sinclair?" he asked. I blinked. No one had used that name all day. "Yes?" I replied slowly. "Hi, I'm Kenny, event coordination team. Mrs. Vera asked that we make sure you're, settled comfortably." My eyebrows lifted slightly. "She did?" Kenny nodded with enthusiasm. "Absolutely. She said you might prefer some quiet, less chaos and all. Follow me?" I stood, adjusted the hem of my dress, and followed him along the side of the tent. We passed servers adjusting buffet trays, floral assistants refreshing arrangements, and a woman sobbing on her phone just behind the kitchen doors. Celebration always looks clean on the outside. Kenny led me to a curtained-off area behind the main stage. Folding chairs, plastic water bottles, floral trimmings in a half-full trash bin. No windows. Just the faint hum of a fan and the occasional pop of laughter through the drapes. "You'll be more comfortable here," he said, motioning to the nearest chair. "Let me know if you need anything. Oh, and Mrs. Vera said you'd appreciate privacy." I didn't respond right away. "Should I be here?" I asked. He paused. "It's what was requested." Then he smiled again, nodded once, and disappeared behind the curtain. I sat in the corner, knees crossed, clutching the necklace my mother gave me. From this side of the world, I could see the backs of the people who used to be my family. They moved like they'd been rehearsed. Each laugh, each toast, each air kiss to the cheek perfectly timed. My father lifted a glass and made a toast to love that withstands storms. Callista glided through the crowd, radiant and camera-ready, as if she'd just floated out of a magazine shoot. I caught a glimpse of Vera, hand on Ellis's arm, waving to a photographer. I used to help plan these kinds of events for Dad. I was the one who convinced him to do his 50th in the garden, not the ballroom, because the light hit better during golden hour. That night, he thanked me in his speech. Now I was backstage like a discarded prop. Someone burst through the curtain, startled, flushed. "Oh!" the woman gasped, hand over her chest. "I thought this was the restroom." She looked at me, then hesitated. I knew the look. She didn't recognize me. "Are you with catering?" I smiled, calm. "No, just a family member who forgot her place." Her face turned beet red. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean—" "It's fine," I said, waving her off. She left quickly, the curtain falling behind her. I leaned back in my chair, the metal frame creaking slightly under me. The music swelled again. The crowd laughed. Someone made a joke about legacy and strong bloodlines. I didn't catch the punchline. They always say, "You're welcome anytime, as long as you stay out of sight." I remembered what my mother used to say, in her dry, southern-tilted voice. "They'll never stab you in the front, honey. It's too messy for a formal event." Somewhere beyond the curtain, the next round of champagne was being served. I imagined my name being crossed off a list, my chair being moved closer to the service exit, My existence rewritten into a polite omission. A silver tray sat on the table beside me, forgotten by a flustered server. I caught my reflection in it, blurred, distorted by the curve. I picked up a lipstick from my bag, reapplied slowly, precisely. Then I straightened my back, the same way my mother taught me when I had to walk through rooms that didn't want to see me. If they wanted to hide me, they should have picked a curtain that didn't open from the inside. The lights dimmed without warning, and a hush fell over the ballroom. A soft musical swell signaled the start of something meant to tug heartstrings. I saw a waiter pull the velvet curtains tighter to darken the room. That's when the screen flickered to life. A slideshow. I leaned back in my seat near the garden exit, arms folded lightly, trying to breathe in a way that didn't show. 30 years of marriage, 30 years of curated love. The first photo appeared, Vera and Ellis in their early years, all smiles and champagne, her blonde hair caught mid-laugh. Then the yacht parties, a baby Callista on her lap, holidays in Vail, ribbon cuttings, more Callista, then her college graduation, a party I wasn't invited to. I waited for my face to flash on the screen, maybe tucked in among the family Christmas cards or from my high school recital where Ellis cried during my solo. But there was nothing. The screen skipped right past my years like they were missing files. It wasn't just absence, it was omission, a silent, deliberate deletion. Laughter and applause erupted around me as the final slide faded, a quote from Ellis floating on the screen. A legacy is built not just in years, but in the love we surround ourselves with. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted copper. Aunt May found me before the lights fully returned. Her voice was soft, like she was asking for forgiveness without saying what for. "I thought maybe they'd mention you in the credits at least," she murmured, glancing toward the screen now gone black. I smiled, a small, controlled curve. "You and me both." She squeezed my shoulder but said nothing else, because what could she say? That she'd let it happen? That she'd clapped along? I needed air. Slipping past a row of chairs and ducking behind a ficus, I made my way toward the side of the estate. A hallway marked "Staff Only" gave me the out I needed. The carpet was different here, thin, utilitarian. A tray of half-empty champagne flutes sat on a side table, lipstick smudges marking their ghosts. I turned a corner and spotted an open room. No one inside. Just a long folding table, a few chairs, and a binder thick with paper. Probably catering contracts or vendor receipts. But curiosity makes people brave. Or reckless. I opened it. Tabs, colored flags, scribbled notes in Vera's precise handwriting. I flipped quickly through it, eyes scanning for something, anything, that explained why I'd been erased. Near the back, folded between a table map and a floral invoice, was a crisp document. I knew the font. I knew the letterhead. An older copy of Ellis's estate draft. There it was. My name, Odessa Sinclair, listed beneath primary heirs. But someone, presumably Vera, had drawn a thick red line through it. Next to it, in pen, a note. Legacy adjustment. Vera approved. It wasn't an oversight. It was a revision, a calculated one. My fingers stayed steady as I folded the paper and tucked it into my clutch. I didn't let the anger come. Not yet. There'd be time for that. Right now, I needed control. I needed strategy. I stepped back into the hall and pulled out my phone. My thumbs barely hesitated. Text to Monroe. Stage 1. Send. A string quartet had started playing somewhere inside. Another performance. Another mask. I walked calmly back toward the ballroom, blending once again into the edges of their celebration. Nobody turned to greet me. Nobody noticed I was gone. Nobody noticed I had returned. But I wasn't here to be seen anymore. They erased me from the video, from the speeches, from the future. But they left a trail, and I was going to follow it. The lights brightened just enough to pull everyone's attention toward the stage. A soft chime of crystal struck from above, followed by a hush that settled like dust. Vera walked to the microphone in a flowing silver gown that caught every flicker of candlelight. Ellis followed 2 steps behind her, hands clasped behind his back like a politician at a funeral. I didn't rise. I didn't applaud. I didn't need to. Vera cleared her throat, her voice floating across the room with the kind of ease that came from years of practice. Good evening, dear friends and family. Tonight, we don't just celebrate a marriage. We honor a journey, a partnership built through storms and sun. She turned her head slightly toward Ellis. He smiled on cue. And most of all, she continued, we celebrate what we've created together. This family, this legacy, and our one and only daughter, Callista. Applause followed like a reflex. People turned toward the front, where Callista rose from her seat, pressed her palms together in mock humility, and dipped her head with just the right amount of grace. A man near me whispered, "That girl was made for lights." I didn't flinch. My hands rested calmly in my lap, but my jaw ached from being still too long. It was a toast, not a declaration, but it felt like a verdict. Callista took the stage for a brief thank you. Her speech was light, polished, carefully unrevealing, but it wasn't her voice that caught my attention. It was what hung around her neck. The necklace, silver, small emerald heart, dainty but bold. It had once been mine, no, not mine, my mother's, given to her by Ellis on their 10th anniversary. I hadn't seen it in years. We thought it was lost, or so I'd been told. I stared at it, transfixed. A familiar ache began in my chest, radiating slowly outward. A woman next to me leaned in and whispered, "Such a sweet heirloom. Vera said it belonged to her grandmother." I turned to her, keeping my expression polite. That's one story, yes. I didn't look at Callista again, not right away. I stared down at the tablecloth instead, its lace patterns swimming as memory tugged me backward. I was 16, soaked from a school recital in the rain. Ellis met me at the door with a towel and that necklace, his hands clumsy as he tried to clasp it around my neck. "You'll wear this one day when you run the Sinclair name," he said. I remember laughing, thinking it was just his way of making me feel special. Now, that promise hung on a stranger's collarbone, rebranded and reintroduced under a new mother's script. I didn't storm the stage. I didn't shout. I didn't ask questions I already knew the answers to. Instead, I pulled out my phone and opened the camera. I focused on Callista, the crowd around her clapping, the necklace catching just enough light. Click! I cropped the photo neatly, zooming in until the pendant was center frame. Then I opened a text to Monroe and typed one word. Proof. Send. As Callista stepped down from the platform, our eyes locked across the room. Hers said nothing. No apology, no gloating. Just clean indifference. They could rewrite the story, steal the lines, wear the jewelry, but they couldn't erase what I remembered. They waited until the room had softened, until the wine had settled into cheeks and chins tilted back in laughter. Then Vera walked back onto the platform, still glowing from the last toast like she was floating in her own spotlight. She clinked her glass again, not loudly, but enough to hush the room once more. "I'd like to take a moment," she began, her voice warm and practiced, "to acknowledge someone very dear to our family. A man who stood by our daughter through the most defining moments of her growth." I felt the breath catch in my throat. Not fear, just instinct. "Marcus Taylor," she beamed. "You were a rock, and your grace has never gone unnoticed." A few heads turned. I heard polite applause. My spine locked, and then I saw him. Marcus, in a navy blazer, a faint discomfort flickering behind his eyes as he stood and gave a tight smile. He glanced across the room once. Our eyes met, barely. He looked down. They had invited my ex-boyfriend. Worse, they honored him, rewrote the story to fit their cast. He was now a pillar of our family, while I remained tucked behind drapes and disposable chairs. They erased my name but remembered his, because it made them look generous. Ellis stood next to Vera, smiling blankly, saying nothing. I watched them, not with sadness, but with growing clarity. The curtain had lifted, and I could see all their strings. I didn't storm out. That would have been too easy for them. I waited until the clapping faded, until people resumed their whine and murmurs. Then I slipped out through the side of the ballroom, past the tables, past the sympathy glances some guests tried not to give me. The cocktail lounge was dim, quieter. A few guests milled near the bar, but none I recognized. I asked the bartender for sparkling water, then slid into a corner seat with a view of the hallway. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Monroe's name. My fingers didn't shake. Trigger asset review, I typed. Estate category B through D. Include Rosemore. I hit send. Almost immediately. Copy that. Stage 1 initiated. I set the phone down, lifted my glass, and took a slow sip. Across the hallway, Callista walked past, flanked by 2 friends. She saw me, paused, smirked, said nothing. I didn't need her to. If they wanted performance, I'd give them theater. Just not the act they cast me for. For a long moment, I just sat there, letting the coldness of the glass match the certainty in my gut. I wasn't planning to reclaim a seat. They'd already thrown out the table. I was building something else entirely. Belonging? That was emotional, fragile, eager to please. Ownership, that was a different currency. That was something they forgot I still had a claim to. Inside the ballroom, laughter rose again. The kind of loud, rehearsed joy that usually came from people trying to sell an image. Ellis's voice floated through faintly, louder than before. I stood. I wasn't walking back in to argue. I wasn't seeking eye contact or acknowledgement. I was walking in to witness. They could parade their perfect portrait, but I had just touched the frame and I was about to flip it. It was somewhere between the band's second rendition of At Last and a passing tray of truffle sliders that I stepped away from the crowd again. The air inside the ballroom had grown heavier, dense with staged laughter and champagne breath. I wasn't angry, not yet, but the air felt thick, like it couldn't carry my name even if someone tried. I walked toward the hallway behind the main tent, a narrow corridor flanked by antique sconces and fresh eucalyptus wreaths. Looking for a restroom, maybe, or just an excuse not to be seen. But then I heard her voice. Vera. I stopped just outside the opening to a dim alcove where she stood speaking to 3 guests dressed in matching ivory. The kind of people who always knew where the camera was. Her voice was clear and casual, like she wasn't hiding anything. This family didn't survive because of Ellis, she said, one hand on her hip. It thrived because I cleaned up the mess he left behind. The group chuckled softly, like she'd just made a witty remark about a salad. And everything that girl lacked in poise, Callista makes up for in legacy, she added. I mean, really, it was like scrubbing a nameplate clean. The words didn't punch, they sliced. I stepped forward just far enough that one of the women caught my eye and faltered mid-sip. Vera hadn't noticed me. Or she had and didn't care. So now I wasn't just missing from the picture. I was the mess that needed cleaning. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. I turned and kept walking, deeper into the less trafficked wing near the bridal suite, past stacked boxes and folded chairs. My shoes clicked lightly against the parquet floor, the only sound in a corridor that felt suspended from the party entirely. There was a storage room I remembered from childhood, a space where gifts were stashed before holidays or where Vera kept seasonal decor. The door was slightly ajar. I stepped in. It was quiet. Cool. A bench sat near the window. On it, a pile of gift bags, one of which had tipped open. Inside, half tucked beneath tissue paper and a glittery card, was a small velvet box. My fingers hesitated for a moment before I reached in. It was light, unassuming. I opened it. Inside was a folded note. The handwriting was instantly familiar. Mom's. The envelope read, "For when she forgets where she came from." I sat down slowly, the weight of it in my hands more potent than anything I'd felt that day. I unfolded the letter. You are my legacy, not the house, not the name, you. The world may decide your worth by what room you're allowed in, but I see you from the inside. And that's the only view that matters. My throat tightened. I pressed the letter to my chest, eyes closed, letting the words sit against me like a second spine. They thought they were shaping the future tonight. What they didn't know was that I'd just unearthed the part they couldn't rewrite. I pulled out my phone. My fingers moved without hesitation. Text to Monroe. Initiate Phase 2. Use maternal archives. Send. I tucked the letter carefully back into the velvet pouch, then placed it in my bag, next to the will from earlier, and the necklace photo. Evidence. Roots. Bloodlines they couldn't sanitize. As I stepped back into the corridor, a young man in a tux turned the corner and nearly bumped into me. Sorry, he said. Are you with staff? I met his eyes, not unkindly. No, sweetheart, I said. I own part of this estate. You're walking on my inheritance. He looked startled, murmured something, and moved on. I stood there for a moment longer, adjusting my bag over my shoulder, the echo of my mother's words carrying me forward. Then I turned, heels steady, and headed back toward the ballroom. Not to hide. Not anymore. They wanted me out of sight, but I had just found the most visible piece of my past, written in ink they couldn't erase. The sky had darkened into that perfect shade of evening blue, where string lights begin to outshine the stars. From my spot near the edge of the garden patio, I watched the staff adjust lighting and position flower arrangements like they were sculpting a final act. The air smelled of lavender and roasted lamb, but the scent couldn't cover the staleness I'd grown familiar with, the artificial kind of cheer that clung to this family like cologne. A young woman with a press badge hovered near the center trellis, notebook in hand, waiting. That's when I heard Vera's voice, low and directive, guiding her like a stage manager behind the curtain. Make sure you capture her against the Sinclair crest, she said, and mention her title exactly as written. She's the future. Callista appeared moments later, clad in a soft rose silk dress, the kind that moved even when she stood still. She posed in front of the large vinyl backdrop, a print of the Sinclair family seal, which, ironically, my mother had designed decades ago when she was still alive and still married to Ellis. Vera handed the reporter a printed bio. Callista Sinclair, brand strategist, heir to the Sinclair vision. I whispered to no one in particular. Funny. My mother drew that crest, and her name's nowhere near it. No one heard. It wasn't meant for anyone but me. Before the woman could begin her questions, the crunch of tires on gravel broke the background chatter. I turned and saw it, a black sedan pulling up quietly, the back door opening without fanfare. Monroe stepped out, sleek and composed in his usual gray suit. No one noticed him but me, which was exactly how he liked it. He made his way toward me with purpose, no rush, no hesitation. When he reached me, he didn't speak, just handed me a slim envelope. Inside, the official notice of asset review and temporary freeze. I nodded. Include the land, I said, folding the envelope and tucking it into my clutch. Especially the gardens. She loves using them for photo ops. He didn't respond, only offered a small nod and turned toward the house. I followed from a distance, just close enough to witness the ripple begin. Near the bar, the estate manager looked up as Monroe approached. He accepted the document and read the first few lines before glancing up. Eyes wide, but lips tight. 3 guests nearby paused mid-sip. I heard the whisper pass between them like an electric current. Is something happening with the estate? Monroe didn't linger. He stepped back, adjusted his tie, and vanished again into the shadows. From across the patio, Vera noticed the tension. Her smile faltered. She didn't approach. Not yet. I walked back toward the garden edge, content to watch. Callista continued her interview, blissfully unaware. She laughed lightly, nodded at rehearsed intervals, gestured toward the house when asked about her plans. Behind me, two guests leaned closer. "Isn't that the original Sinclair daughter?" one asked. "Was she ever really part of the family?" the other replied. I didn't turn. I let the words settle, the way you let smoke curl into open air. They didn't sting the way they once would have. They didn't define me. Not anymore. In my clutch, my phone buzzed. A message from Monroe. Status, received and filed. Public record lock pending. I opened a new message and typed slowly, deliberately. Now we watch the ripple. Send. They made Callista the face of the future, but I had just reminded them who built the foundation. The applause from Callista's interview had barely faded when I slipped through the side corridor near the wine room. My heels moved soundlessly over the polished floor, yet each step thudded through my chest like a private metronome counting down. I hadn't spoken to Ellis all evening, not since he smiled during Vera's speech and pretended not to see me. But he found me anyway. He didn't call my name, just walked up with that strained, rehearsed smile I'd come to associate with family dinners that ended with silence instead of dessert. "Odessa," he said, soft and slow, like he'd never practiced saying it. "Please, let tonight be about peace." I didn't respond. "We've worked so hard for this image," he added, eyes drifting toward the direction of the patio. "Don't ruin it." My throat didn't tighten. My heart didn't race. I'd already spent those responses hours ago. I just watched him. "Whose piece, Dad?" I asked. "Yours? Or mine?" He didn't answer. He only nodded, like he understood, which made it worse. It's strange watching the man who raised you bow to someone who didn't. Stranger still to feel nothing when he does. He left me there in that narrow hallway, alone with a ficus tree and a lifetime of choices made without me. I waited a moment longer, then walked back toward the terrace. The air outside was heavier now, thick with humidity and the scent of expensive perfumes and evening smoke. A string of guests hovered near the bar, the edges of their sentences curling with gossip. That's when a woman with a clipboard approached me, smiling the way people do when they're about to be rude with kindness. "Miss Sinclair?" she asked. "Yes." "I'm so sorry," she said, stepping closer. "But Mrs. Vera asked if you could, leave a little early tonight. She's just concerned about possible misunderstandings." I felt heads turn, not all at once, more like a ripple. A few glanced up from their glasses, others paused their laughter. I smiled gently. "Of course. Tell Mrs. Vera I'd hate to confuse anyone with my presence." Then I turned and walked, past the terrace, past the string lights and their manufactured warmth, through the corridor where Ellis had stood moments ago, and out into the garden path leading to the front. No one followed. That was the final straw, not the erasure, not the necklace, not even the fake legacy on camera. It was the precision of the dismissal, the way they made it feel administrative. Somewhere along the path, I stopped and let the dark wrap around me. I remembered being 14, told by a teacher I was a bit too much in class. How I learned to shrink for space. How I said yes to silence because it seemed easier than explaining my presence. That silence was never peace. It was permission. I pulled out my phone and opened a message to Monroe. "Start asset mapping. Include brand name derivatives. Don't notify them, yet." I tucked the phone away, didn't slam it, didn't cry. I kept walking down the estate path, past the manicured shrubs, the stone benches where Vera liked to stage photo shoots in the fall, past the pebbled fountain Callista claimed was her favorite thinking spot. My spine stayed straight. My shoes didn't falter. As I reached the front gate, the fireworks began behind me, exploding into the sky with calculated drama. Reds, whites, golds. Her moment. They thought pushing me out would end the noise. But I had just learned how to make thunder. The morning after didn't feel like morning. The air was heavy with dew, and the birds sounded half-hearted, as if even they knew something had shifted. I sat on the garden bench where Ellis used to read the newspaper before the estate belonged more to Vera's vision than to anything real. Monroe arrived without fanfare, just the way I asked. No one from the house staff acknowledged him. Maybe they didn't see him. Or maybe they knew better by now. He carried a sleek tablet under one arm, a black folder under the other. "I brought Caleb," he said. "He's the freelance videographer. You'll want to see what we pulled from the B-roll." Caleb, barely 30 and clearly uncomfortable, set up his laptop on the stone table between us. He avoided eye contact. I didn't blame him. He tapped a few keys. The footage began, shaky, informal, behind-the-scenes clips captured during last night's celebration. Vera's voice filled the speakers. "As long as she doesn't step on stage, we control the narrative." There was laughter, not cruel, just casual, the kind that always feels worse. Monroe froze the frame. "Download that," I said. "Archive it." Caleb looked up, shifting in his seat. "Should I remove it from the final cut?" I stared at him, my voice even. "No, let them forget. I won't." He gave a slow nod and got to work. We moved inside to the side library, one of the few rooms in the estate Vera hadn't redecorated. Monroe laid the black folder open on the desk. Inside, a draft of an injunction citing misuse of family legacy, misrepresentation of estate origin, and the unauthorized use of images and items connected to my mother's name. He added a USB drive next to the folder. "And the audio from Ellis?" I handed him my phone, already queued up to the file. The muffled sound of my father's voice echoed through the small space. I know it wasn't right, but Vera said it would make things cleaner. She said Odessa wouldn't want to be part of this anyway. Monroe didn't smile. He didn't nod. Just said, "This plus the footage, we could shut down their PR machine for good." "Not yet," I said. "I want them to tremble first." I stood and walked toward the door. The hallway outside was quiet. Too quiet. As I made my way back toward the patio, I passed two members of the housekeeping staff speaking in hushed tones. One looked up and quickly turned away. The other didn't notice me at all. "Did you hear?" the one who turned away had said. "Some clips didn't make it into the press package. Her lawyer was here all night." The ripple had started. By the time I reached the corridor outside the ballroom, I found myself in front of the family wall, a gallery of photos framed in gold and arranged by year. Vera had updated it recently. Callista's face appeared more than once. Ellis stood in nearly every frame. My mother was in one. I was in none. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small 4x6 photo I'd printed that morning. It was of my mother and me, sitting on the estate steps, both barefoot, laughing. No makeup, no press. I slipped the frame from the wall, placed the photo inside, and set it right back where the glass hadn't been touched yet. I didn't ask. No one stopped me. I walked away. Back in the garden, Monroe's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression unreadable. Then he turned the screen toward me. A photo had been sent anonymously. Callista, holding the necklace. The one that was never hers. The caption read, "Didn't even ask for it." "They opened the door for legacy warfare," I said quietly, and I was done knocking. The digital world didn't wait for anyone, not even the Sinclairs. By late morning, my phone buzzed every 30 seconds. Monroe was the first to text. "It's gone live. Over 20,000 views and rising." The clip was short, no more than 20 seconds. Grainy, slightly off-center, but clear. Vera's voice unmistakable. "I didn't do it for her. I did it so my daughter could finally shine." Then the kicker. That girl, she was just the paperwork. It hit the internet like a dropped match on dry leaves. I watched the video once, then again. Not because I needed to, I'd heard it live, but because I wanted to see how strangers would hear it. They didn't disappoint. The comments were already pouring in. "She said that about her stepdaughter? Cold." Legacy built on lies. Typical. Monroe arrived within the hour with his laptop, settling at the edge of the estate's broadcast room, now awkwardly quiet. No more interviews, no more curated joy. We went ahead and released the legacy asset summary to 5 outlets, he said. No warning, full transparency. I leaned forward. The summary laid it out cleanly. Original deed to the Rosemore estate, 51% attributed to my mother's family line. Bank transfers. Property improvements funded by trusts Ellis never mentioned. All tied to me, and erased in silence. And this, Monroe added, tapping the screen, is Callista's website. Every press shoot, every sponsored post tagged at this location. All monetized. Without consent. I stared at the screen. They thought nameplates meant ownership, I said. They forgot about deeds. By noon, the blowback was in full swing. Twitter lit up with threads. Legacy gossip forums unearthed old gala photos where I'd been cropped out. Former donors to Vera's foundation asked for audits. The foundation's Instagram page went from congratulatory comments to long threads demanding statements. I opened my phone and scrolled quietly. Imagine erasing your own daughter for clout. Callista isn't legacy, she's marketing. It wasn't all support, but the tide had turned. And that was enough. I'd barely had time to sip my coffee before a new message came through. No name attached, just a number and a single line. The footage didn't leak from media. Someone inside the house sent it. I stared at the screen, then slowly saved the contact under a new name, Echo. There were too many fingerprints now for Vera to wipe clean, too many whispers she couldn't bleach. I walked to the side window overlooking the garden. From here, I could see the bench where my mother used to sit with me, back when roses still climbed the trellis instead of PR banners. The vines were gone now, ripped out for aesthetic symmetry. Monroe stepped back into the room. They're calling a meeting at the board, he said. They want to explain themselves. I didn't look away from the window. Let them talk, I replied, straightening my blazer. I've got receipts. They built a legacy on performance, but now the curtain was wide open, and the lights were theirs to face. The boardroom at Rosemore had been redecorated to feel modern. Minimalist chairs, frosted glass, gold fixtures. But beneath it all, it still reeked of old decisions, some of them mine by birthright, others erased with a smile and a lawyer. Vera sat at the head of the table, posture upright, fingers laced like she was hosting a fundraiser. Callista was to her left, her eyes cast downward, silent. Ellis took the seat across from me, not meeting my gaze. Monroe stood just behind me, quiet but unmistakably present. He placed a folder on the table. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet thud of consequence. Vera was the first to speak. We understand there's been noise. Truth, I said. That's what you're calling noise now. She smiled, small, condescending. Social media thrives on hysteria. We know how quickly stories spiral. Ellis leaned forward. We just want this to calm down. The press is asking questions. I looked at him. You weren't silent. You were complicit. He didn't argue. Monroe opened the folder, sliding forward a series of documents, screenshots, property records, excerpts of estate drafts with my name crossed out in red ink, the video transcript of Vera's off-the-record confession. Your foundation's filings, he said, and a detailed timeline of when Odessa's identity was actively removed from public materials. Vera shifted, but didn't lose her poise. So what is this really about? Money? Position? I leaned in slightly, voice clear. I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to correct the record. The silence in the room was thick. Even Callista, who hadn't spoken once, looked up at that. No one raised their voice. No one cried. Just a line drawn in ink and legacy. After the meeting, I stepped outside. The sun had dipped just enough to cast the estate garden in that golden light photographer's chase. I heard the door creak behind me and knew it was him before he said a word. Ellis. He didn't speak right away. He stood beside me at the fountain, hands clasped in front of him, like the weight of silence was easier to carry than truth. "You know I never meant for you to feel like this," he finally said. I turned my head toward him, not with anger, just finality. "You didn't have to say it, Dad. You just had to stand there while she said it for you." He started to say something else, but I was already walking. The path curved past the old rose trellis, now bare. I remembered being 10, running barefoot down this gravel with my mother laughing behind me. We'd taken a photo near the fountain once. It used to hang inside the house. Now it was gone, probably replaced by something curated and neutral. I smiled faintly. Let them replace the photo. They can't replace the foundation. My steps slowed as I neared the front gate. The house loomed behind me, unchanged, unmoved, unaware. Then I heard his voice again, just as I reached the exit. "What do you want from me, Odessa?" I turned slightly, just enough to meet his eyes. For the first time, he looked like someone waiting to be forgiven. "I want nothing," I said. "That's the difference between you and me. You still need something to feel whole." The stream went live at exactly 10 a.m. People expected another feel-good clip about Sinclair heritage, probably Vera handing Callista another plaque, Ellis smiling at the edges, Callista branding herself without blinking. But instead, the screen cut to me. I stood in front of the original blueprint of the Rosemore estate. My mother's sketch in charcoal, faint coffee stains still visible in the corners. I was dressed simply, blazer dark, hair tucked back. No jewelry, no set dressing, just presence. "My name," I began, "has been written over, cropped out, tucked behind curtains, and made to feel like a clerical error. But legacy isn't built by spotlight. It's built by those who were never invited to the stage." A pause. I held the letter in my hand, the one my mother wrote before her death. I didn't read it aloud. I just let it rest between my fingers. "They wanted a name to polish," I continued. "I gave them one, and now I'm taking it back." On the screen, the camera cut to a series of documents being slid across conference tables. Monroe delivering notices to legal teams, estate trustees, bank representatives. Every contract that once assumed my silence had been amended. Every photo that once used my face without consent, revoked. They had built their empire on the illusion of unity, and I had dismantled it with proof. Monroe's voiceover played next. Calm, precise, effective immediately, all usage of Odessa Sinclair's name, likeness, and personal history within any Sinclair-branded material, commercial or charitable, is prohibited. The Sinclair Foundation is restructured under new leadership and will fund scholarships for women disinherited by family trusts or erased from public legacy. The live chat under the stream exploded. Then the screen faded to black. At the estate, Ellis sat alone. The office was sterile now, portraits removed, chairs pulled back, like the space no longer knew how to hold people. He tried calling. Twice. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because I didn't owe him another reply. A week later, I stood in my new home. Nothing grand, but mine. Clean white walls, plants by the windows, shelves not overly styled, just framed memories that belonged to no one else. On the top shelf, I placed a photo of my mother and me, arms around each other, laughing with our heads tilted back. Next to it, a small brass plaque read, "The name I carry was never theirs to give. It was mine to reclaim." Monroe dropped off a folder that afternoon. Final filings, closing the loop. On the cover, Sinclair Initiative, now under sole control. He didn't stay long, just left it on the counter and said, "No one's calling it a foundation anymore. They're calling it reform." I smiled. After he left, I watered the plant next to the plaque and opened the sliding glass door. The air was sharp and clean. My silence wasn't hollow anymore. It was mine. At dusk, I poured myself a glass of iced tea and sat by the window as the last emails from Monroe trickled in, confirming board resignations, media apologies, and one final request from Ellis for a private meeting. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. As I closed the door that evening, a quiet fell around the house, not the kind I used to fear. This silence felt earned. They tried to hide me behind the curtain. What they didn't know was, I built the stage. Hi, my name's Vincent. At my sister's wedding. They sat me alone by the door. They served me leftovers, while everyone else had champagne and caviar. Then she leaned in, smiling, and said, "You should feel honored." But it wasn't just the food. It was the years of silence, the exhibitions they sabotaged, the photos they stole, the love they pretended was mine. Until I stopped being useful. They dressed me in shame for decades. But what happens when the forgotten daughter brings the truth to the party? I read the message twice, then a third time. "Can you shoot my wedding?" "Of course, for free. Your family." It came from Jessa, casually tossed into our barely there text thread like she was asking me to pick up milk. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the reply button, but I didn't type a word. It wasn't just what she said. It was everything underneath. That familiar current of entitlement, of being needed only when it served someone else's storyline. I didn't respond. 2 days later, the phone rang. Mom's name flashed across the screen. I should have let it go to voicemail, but I didn't. I pressed answer and said nothing. "Vincent," she began, syrupy and tight. "I know you got Jess's message. It's important to her, to all of us. You do understand what family means, don't you?" I stayed silent. "I mean, after everything we've done for you, this is the least you can do. We're not asking much. Just show up, be supportive, like a sister should." She hung up before I could respond. Or maybe she never expected me to. Show up, be supportive. The irony tasted bitter. I arrived at the venue early. Alone, of course. No date, no +1. Just my small navy dress and a quiet kind of armor I'd learned to wear around them. The St. Augustine Church looked like a page torn from a wedding magazine. White roses, soft gold drapery, floating petals along the aisle. Perfect. Too perfect. It didn't belong to people like me, even if we shared blood. At the check-in desk, the woman with the headset and tight smile flipped through a list. "Name?" "Vincent Ward." She paused. "Oh, you're not." Her eyes scanned the page again. "Ah. Table 17. She pointed toward the far back, an awkward little nook near the exit doors. It wasn't even a real table, just a two-top with one chair, no name card. I gave her a thin smile, thanked her, and walked over. I could have asked questions. I could have made a scene, but I didn't. That wasn't my role in this family. I sat down, crossed my legs, and tried to breathe. Across the room, a sea of curated elegance flowed. Designer gowns, champagne glasses, practiced laughter. Cameras flashed, people hugged. No one looked at me. A waiter passed with a tray of champagne flutes. He skipped my table. It felt like sitting inside a portrait, where someone forgot to paint you in. I thought back to Jessa's 25th birthday. I had flown in from a shoot in Chicago, missing deadlines and losing a client just to make it on time. I brought her a limited edition art print, signed by the photographer she idolized in college. She didn't even unwrap it. That night, her boyfriend gave her a Cartier bracelet, and suddenly I no longer existed. Why did I even come? Maybe out of habit, maybe out of guilt, or maybe, somewhere buried deep, a desperate flicker of hope that one day I'd actually be seen. That day hadn't come, and today wasn't going to be it either. Jessa walked by in her robe, hair pinned, makeup glowing. She saw me, I know she did, but she looked right through me and kept walking. My phone buzzed. A client confirming the final approval of a magazine cover featuring my latest photo series, a milestone in my career. I locked the screen without replying. My name wasn't even printed on the seating chart. Not that they forgot. They never intended to include me. But when the appetizers came out, the message was even clearer. Across the ballroom, silver trays gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Waiters floated like clockwork, white gloves, synchronized steps, delivering artistry on plates. foie gras with berry glaze, lobster bisque in porcelain bowls, truffle risotto that smelled like money and praise. One by one, the guests at nearby tables murmured delighted reactions. At my table, the only sound was the clink of a single fork hitting porcelain. A waiter stopped beside me, avoiding my eyes. He placed a plate down, cold, unevenly arranged, and silent. It held half a dinner roll and a mess of wilted greens, maybe arugula that had seen better days. No dressing, no fork, just shame served with a side of nothing. I looked at it for a long time. The couple at table 16 glanced over, then quickly turned back to their conversation, their laughter suddenly louder. One of them whispered something. I didn't catch it, but I felt it. They fed me scraps, on purpose, not by accident, not an oversight, a decision. I'd spent years trying to convince myself that this family didn't mean to hurt me, that their distance was cluelessness, not cruelty. But this was artfully staged. They didn't want me to feel included. They wanted me to feel grateful just to be tolerated. A shadow crossed my table. "Hope everything's okay over here," Jessa said, her voice sugar-coated and echoing through her champagne smile. She wore white like it was armor, her curls pinned, her makeup flawless. I'd photographed women like her before. Women who knew exactly how to turn softness into spectacle. "We kept it simple for you," she went on, lowering her voice just slightly. "Didn't want to overwhelm. I know you're used to more laid-back stuff." My hand tightened around the edge of the table. Jessa leaned closer, almost whispering. "Smile for the camera, sis. Wouldn't want to ruin the aesthetic." Then she walked off, her heels clicking like punctuation. Her laughter dissolved into the hum of the orchestra, and I was left with the half-roll and a silence more deafening than music. I pushed the plate away. The air smelled like rosemary and champagne, but I had no appetite. Not for food, not for fake kindness, not for pretending anymore. My mind drifted, pulled back to a memory I never asked to remember. Thanksgiving, 2018. I had spent the whole night before baking. A peach pie with a flaky crust, made from scratch. I drove 4 hours in traffic to be there on time. I walked in proud, offering it to Mom. She barely looked up from the stove. "Store-bought crust? Vincent, really?" "No," I said. "It's homemade." She shrugged, turned her back, and called out to Jessa, who had just posted a filtered photo of Mom on Instagram with the caption number Queen Rochelle. Rochelle's eyes sparkled. Now that's thoughtful. They ate Jessa's Instagram praise like dessert. My pie stayed untouched. I remember sitting at the end of that table, listening to them talk over me, around me. I smiled through it then. Thought maybe I was just imagining it. Now I knew better. Back in the ballroom, someone started giving a toast. I didn't hear the words. My hand moved to my purse, fingers grazing the small silver USB tucked inside the lining. It was warm against my skin, almost pulsing. I wasn't going to ruin anything today. I hadn't come here to start a fight. But maybe. I hadn't come to sit quietly either. They fed me scraps on purpose. But they don't know I brought something far less edible, and far more dangerous. The message on Jessa's phone glowed like fire through glass. I wouldn't have noticed it if the guy beside me hadn't dropped his own. As he bent down to retrieve it, the screen next to mine lit up on the table. Jessa's phone, left unattended for just a moment. "Can't wait till tonight. Just remember, you're mine, wedding or not." Tobin, his name was at the top. I blinked. The world didn't tilt or crack open. It just stopped. I looked up, across the room, and there she was, Jessa, curled into Emery's side like a romantic comedy heroine. She was laughing at something he'd said. Perfect, effortless, deadly. My grip on my clutch tightened so hard it left imprints on my fingers. The phone dimmed and the moment passed, but the words were burned into me. She was cheating. No, she was cheating. With Tobin. And not just before the wedding. Tonight. The audacity. The casualness. the complete, unapologetic filth of it all. I watched as she kissed Emery on the cheek and leaned in for a selfie with his mother. And it hit me like a second slap. I wasn't just invisible to them. I was their cover, the quiet sibling, the one they used to deflect attention while they played pretend. I stood slowly, needing air, needing distance. I walked past the bar and slipped into the side hallway near the restrooms, pressing my back against the cool wall. But instead of relief, another memory clawed its way to the surface. 3 years ago, Berlin. It was going to be my breakout. A solo photography exhibition at a respected European gallery. Contracts were nearly signed, flights were being discussed. And then, radio silence. The gallery director sent a short email. Unfortunately, we are no longer able to proceed. Best of luck. I spiraled, questioned myself, blamed myself. Months later, a mentor from my graduate program pulled me aside after a panel. Look, Vincent, she said carefully. Someone made calls. Someone high profile. Said you were emotionally unstable, difficult to work with, not commercially viable. She didn't have to say who. Dad never cared about my work. He didn't even try to understand it. But sabotaging me? I hadn't imagined he'd go that far. And maybe that's the worst part. I hadn't imagined it. I'd trusted him, despite every sign that I shouldn't. I returned to the reception hall, numb, moving like I was underwater. At table 17, my exile corner, I sat down and stared blankly ahead. The applause around me blurred. Another toast, another self-congratulating lie. I pulled out my phone. An email had come through from the editorial team at National Photojournal. Congratulations, Vincent. We've selected your portrait series for our spring cover. Exceptional work. My first cover. The kind of thing you tell your family about. The kind of moment they throw parties for when it's someone else. I locked my screen without replying. I looked around. Not a single face here would care. Not one person would cheer. Rochelle would say it was luck. Dad would say, nice hobby. Jessa? She'd probably post a selfie with I opened my clutch and stared at the small USB inside. It was cool against my fingertips. I could feel the line being drawn inside me, not in anger, not even in grief, but in truth. Clean and cold. Mom once told me, you owe us. We've given you everything. And Jessa, during one of our last real conversations, if you could even call it that, had laughed and said, let's be real, Vincent. You're just background. You make the rest of us look good. They thought I was the silence that framed the picture. She wore white. I had the truth. And my truth was finally louder than their silence. Mom cornered me near the restroom. Her lipstick was perfect, her threats even more so. She'd timed it well, right before the speeches, when no one was looking. A smile on her face, hand delicately placed on my arm, voice wrapped in sugar. Vincent, darling, let's not ruin the evening, she whispered. I said nothing. She leaned closer, breath scented with expensive perfume and polished control. If you say or show anything tonight, consider your career done. I made 1 phone call before. I'll make 10 this time. Do you understand me? I didn't flinch, but my pulse was screaming in my ears. She stepped back, smile still glued in place. You're here as a guest, not a martyr. Keep it classy. Then she turned, heels tapping against the marble like a gavel. Case closed. I stood there, back against the cool tile, trying to steady my breath. My mother didn't scream. She sliced, and I was bleeding beneath the surface. But this wasn't new. 6 years ago, I'd landed my first gallery opportunity in Manhattan. A real one. My name on the wall. My work, raw portraits of working-class women, centered and seen. Then Rochelle called. Change of plans, she said. We're doing family portraits that weekend. Grandma will be in town. You know how rare that is? I've already committed, Mom. The gallery's confirmed. Oh, please, she cut in. We're your family, Vincent. This is more important than a few pictures on a wall. I canceled the show. She didn't thank me. Grandma didn't even like the photos. The gallery gave my slot to someone else. I didn't get another solo invite for over a year. That was the first time I realized, in my family, love was conditional, and sacrifice was never remembered, only expected. Back at table 17, I sat down again. The ballroom lights dimmed slightly as the MC tapped the mic. The crowd hushed. I opened my clutch and stared at the USB inside. It was still there, tucked in like a secret, like a truth too sharp to carry in my hands. Rochelle's words echoed. "You owe us!" I closed my fingers around the metal. "No," I whispered. "You owe me." I scanned the room. Jessa was glowing, sipping champagne, her dress shimmering like deceit. Dad laughed too loudly at a joke no one else heard. Rochelle nodded graciously to distant relatives, as if none of it was unraveling. A waiter leaned toward me. "Ma'am, are you all right?" "I will be," I said. He moved on. I didn't watch him go. My eyes locked on the stage. This time, I won't bow. I won't beg. I will speak. But first, let me remind you what she stole before she wore that veil. It was 3 weeks ago. I was sorting prints for a client when an email came through from a woman I hadn't heard from in years, a gallery client from LA. We'd worked together on a small campaign back in 2019. "Hey, just curious, wasn't this your shot from the Venice Boardwalk series? It's in Jessa's new press kit, no credit line." She attached a screenshot. There it was. My photo, my composition, the golden hour lighting, the color grading only I used. And front and center, Jessa, looking over her shoulder in a white dress, laughing into nothing. My art, her brand. No mention of me, no byline, no tag. I stared at the image so long my eyes watered. Then I closed the laptop and walked away. I didn't scream. I didn't call her. I just remembered. 2 years ago, I did confront her. Back when I still believed conversations could fix things. "Jessa, you used my work without permission," I said, holding up her latest magazine spread. She didn't blink. "It's just a photo, Vincent. Relax. People care about the model, not the background." The background. That word clung to me like mildew. It followed me into this wedding, into every interaction I had with them. I wasn't their sister. I was a prop, a supporting character in their curated lives. And yet I was the one who had created the image, who framed her face, who saw her through the lens, even when she refused to see me at all. Tonight, I sat quietly at table 17, the USB still inside my clutch, nestled beside a lip balm and folded tissue. The orchestra played something light and classical, perfect for a fairy tale evening. I stood. My hands were steady now. I walked toward the front of the room, toward the AV booth near the corner. The MC was reviewing a printed schedule. I stopped beside him and said simply, "There's one more story the guests need to see before the final speech." He blinked. I don't think that's on the... "It is now." He hesitated, his eyes flicking toward the stage manager. "I'm not asking," I said. "Either you cue it, or I will." He swallowed hard, then nodded slowly. "Where's the file?" I handed him the USB. As he turned toward the tech crew, I turned back to the room. A sea of faces, all pretending nothing was off-kilter, that everything was orchestrated perfectly. They didn't see the wires unraveling beneath the floor. I walked slowly back to my table, sat down, straightened my silverware, even though I wouldn't be eating. Not tonight. Across the ballroom, I saw Mom whisper something to Dad. Jessa was mid-conversation with one of the bridesmaids. She still looked flawless, still perfectly unaware. The lights flickered. The projector screen lowered. People murmured. A few heads turned. A ripple of confusion spread from table to table, a low, rustling sound of expectation. I folded my hands in my lap. This is not revenge, it's release. The screen flickered. Then the first frame appeared, and Jessa's face drained of color. Gasps rippled across the ballroom like shattered glass. The image on screen showed Jessa at her engagement party, arm in arm with Emery, both smiling for the crowd. But within seconds, the video shifted. A clip caught her stepping away, glancing at her phone, smirking as her fingers tapped quickly. Then the message appeared, crystal clear. Tobin, can't wait till tonight. Just remember, you're mine, wedding or not. Time-stamped, dated, undeniable. Jessa's mouth dropped open. Emery sat frozen, then slowly turned his head to look at her. I didn't need to be near them to feel the heat of his realization. He wasn't the groom. He was the shield. The next scene cut to my voice, calm, precise. They dressed me in silence. I returned the favor with clarity. Clips followed. Short, stinging. Thanksgiving. Rochelle tossing my homemade pie into the trash, saying, "Next time, buy from Whole Foods. At least their crust is consistent." A voicemail from her a year later, telling me, "We'll reschedule your show. Grandma will be in town. You know how fragile she is. Be flexible." She never rescheduled. The gallery gave the slot away. Then a call recording. Dad's voice, measured, businesslike. "She's talented, yes, but volatile. Not someone we'd trust to carry a brand. Her work's emotional, not marketable." It was his voice. No ambiguity, just sabotage dressed in professional detachment. Another cut. Jessa at a launch party, sipping wine on a rooftop, camera rolling. "She's so dramatic. I mean, art's cute and all, but we're the ones with real jobs, real lives, right?" Laughter. Then silence. The final clip zoomed in on the wedding seating chart. Table 17. One chair, no name. I stood still, letting the room inhale what I had exhaled. Emery stood slowly, lips parted, but no words. He turned to Jessa and said, barely above a whisper, "Did you ever love me?" She reached for his hand, mascara smudged and cracking. Wait!" But he stepped away. Just one step, and then another, and he was gone. The Winston matriarch rose, spine straight and voice like ice. "You tried to attach us to this disgrace?" She didn't wait for an answer. Neither did her husband. Rochelle fumbled to stand, stammering something about misrepresentation. Walter hadn't moved. He stared at the tablecloth like it had betrayed him, too. I walked to the microphone without invitation. No shaking, no smile. "You called me dramatic, difficult, disposable, but really, I was just inconvenient." My voice rang clear. "To everyone who watched and said nothing, congratulations. You no longer get to pretend. You saw it, you heard it, and you'll carry it with you." I scanned the crowd, their eyes wide, many lowering their heads. Not out of shame, but because they knew I had told the truth, and truth is heavy. "You dressed me in silence. Tonight, I wear my own voice." I stepped back. A beat of silence held. Then, one clap, two, then a wave. It wasn't thunderous. It wasn't a standing ovation. It was real. I turned, ready to leave the stage, when I heard Jessa's voice behind me, small, shaky, trying to hold on to whatever illusion she could salvage. "What did you do to me?" I didn't turn around. "I just stopped letting you do it to me. But the thing about people like my sister, they don't fall quietly. They claw, they scream, sometimes in silence, sometimes in smiles, but always in chaos." Emery stood, his expression flat, not angry, not confused, just done. He slipped the silver ring off his finger with a quiet finality and placed it on the edge of the table. "You don't even understand love," he said. "Just performance." No one breathed. Jessa's hand trembled as she reached for him, but he had already turned. No fanfare, no accusations. Just a man walking away from a staged life. The Winston matriarch rose next, her pearls stiff against her neck. "This family," she announced, "has no honor. You nearly tied us to fraud. We will not be associated with this." Her husband gave a single nod before they followed Emery out of the room. Quiet, clean exits. Surgical, devastating. Guests murmured, some in pity, some in satisfaction. A few picked up their jackets and slowly made their way toward the doors. No one was dancing anymore. Jessa collapsed into a chair. Her dress, once a symbol of everything she'd curated, now looked heavy, wrinkled, and wrong. Her makeup smeared in streaks across her cheekbones. She didn't speak. She just sat. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from one of Jessa's former brand reps. "Hi, Jessa. Due to unexpected PR circumstances, we'll be discontinuing the skincare campaign effective immediately." Another came seconds later. "We need to pause all pending content. Too much exposure, not the good kind." And then her publicist, loud and blunt on speakerphone. "Jessa, you're radioactive. Sponsors are pulling out fast. You need to go offline, like now." I didn't gloat. I didn't even smile. It wasn't victory, it was gravity. That's what truth does when it finally lands. I stepped into a back hallway, needing air. Instead, I got Rochelle. She blocked my way, clutching a drink in one hand, mascara flaking beneath her eyes, rage sharpened by embarrassment. "You humiliated us," she hissed. "You humiliated your sister. Is this what you wanted? To destroy your family?" "No," I said. "I just wanted to be treated like your daughter." Her eyes narrowed. "You always make everything about you." Walter's voice broke through from behind her. "Enough." He stepped forward, his tone low but unshakable. "This family broke a long time ago, Rochelle. Vincent just stopped pretending." She stared at him, stunned, like she didn't recognize the man standing beside her. Neither did I. And yet, somehow, in that moment, he looked more human than he ever had. Rochelle didn't speak again. She turned, tossed the drink onto a nearby table, and walked out. Guests were now openly leaving. A few offered me nods, some respectful, some just awkward. The ones who stayed were quiet. The ones who left would carry the story in whispers. I returned to table 17. The USB was still there, tucked under a napkin. Empty now. All of its secrets spilled, and none left to keep. I held it in my hand and closed my fingers around it. My body felt light. Not triumphant, not even proud, just unchained. I looked around the room. My sister slouched in a chair like the air had left her lungs. Rochelle was gone. Walter stood by a window, arms folded, watching a world he'd built crack and sink. I didn't win, but I ended the game. The next morning, my mother called me. Not to apologize, to beg. Her voice was scratchy, thin, trying to sound steady. "I think we all said things we didn't mean," she offered. I didn't respond. "Can we meet? Just talk. Please, Vincent." I closed my eyes and breathed in slowly. I recognized the tone. Not remorse, desperation. She didn't want to make peace. She wanted to contain the fallout. "I've already said what I needed to," I told her. "Publicly." There was a pause. Then, quieter. "We've reflected, Walter and I. We want to move forward as a family. Your version of family isn't something I need anymore." Click. Later that week, I received a letter in the mail. Handwritten, unusually neat for my father. It didn't say, "I'm sorry," it said, "We hope someday you'll understand what we tried to do." That was the last time I heard from either of them. And honestly, that was enough. I didn't need a reconciliation. I needed a release. And I had found it. But not everything that ends stays gone. It was a rainy Tuesday in March when Jessa showed up at the front door of my studio. No makeup. Hair pulled back. Jacket soaked. "I'm not here to explain," she said. "Good," I replied. I need work." I stood in the doorway for a long time. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her heels were gone. Her voice no longer held knives. "You know," I said, "you could have called first. I didn't think you'd pick up." She wasn't wrong. I let her in. The studio smelled like paint and varnish. The floors were clean. My assistant Caleb was editing prints in the back room. Jessa stood awkwardly in the front gallery space, surrounded by portraits of strangers who had trusted me more in minutes than she had in 30 years. "I don't need you to forgive me," she said. I need to start over. I believed her, not fully, but enough to take a risk. Pause. Long pause. I studied her face. Not for beauty this time, for intent. You'll show up early, I said. You'll clean everything. You'll be invisible for a while. She nodded. And you'll earn your way into the frame this time. That night, I stood on the rooftop of the studio. The city was soft below me, breathing in shadows and streetlights. Caleb joined me, mug of tea in his hand. So, he asked, what's your next project? I thought for a moment. The wind tugged at my sleeves. Portraits of rebirth, I said, but not from ashes, from clarity. And yet, clarity doesn't mean the wound is gone. I stood alone on the rooftop of my studio, the Brooklyn skyline soft in the distance, city lights flickering like quiet thoughts. The air was cool, but not cold. Spring was somewhere between the buildings, still deciding if it wanted to stay. In my hand was an old photo I hadn't looked at in years. Me and Jessa. I was maybe 10. She, 12. She stood front and center in a white ballet costume, hair in curls, perfect posture. I was in the background, slightly out of focus, cropped at the shoulder, smiling like I wasn't supposed to be there. I traced the edge of the picture with my thumb. They never saw me clearly. But I do. Inside the studio, Caleb was muttering about a crooked frame. I could hear the sound of tape being pulled, the soft thump of a print being adjusted. "Hey, Vincent," he called. "This one's a little off, but I think it's honest." I laughed. "Good, leave it that way." Guests were starting to arrive for the opening night of my new series, Reborn in Focus. Some were collectors, some were friends, all were chosen. Liana brought over a tray of sparkling water and tiny lemon cookies. Someone cued music, something soft and simple, and in the middle of the room, someone raised a glass. "To the family you make," they said. Everyone echoed it. Glasses clinked. I stood in the center of the photo this time, not because I asked to be there, but because they pulled me in. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of Jessa. She was quietly sweeping near the back corner, where guests wouldn't notice her. She didn't look up. She didn't expect applause. And she didn't run. Later, when the last guest had left and silence returned like an old friend, I checked my phone. One new voicemail. "Vincent, it's your mother. I know you don't owe us anything, but I hope someday you'll forgive me. Not for me. For you." I didn't delete it, but I didn't call back either. Some things aren't meant to be repaired. Just remembered, then released. I walked to my private workspace in the back. The walls smelled faintly of varnish and steel. My favorite chair creaked as I sat down. Across from me, centered perfectly on the wall, was a new photograph. Black and white. My own face. Sharp. Bold. Unapologetic. Underneath, handwritten in ink. Truth. Framed by my own hand. No more asking to be seen. No more waiting for a seat. I built the table. Maybe you saw a piece of yourself in me. Maybe you've spent years shrinking at the edge of someone else's story, waiting for a seat, waiting to be enough, waiting to be seen. But here's what I've learned, and I say this as someone who's walked through silence, shame, and survival. You don't need their permission to matter. You don't need to keep bleeding just because they call it family. And you sure as hell don't need to sit at a table where your name is missing. You can build your own. I did. Not out of revenge, but out of truth, out of clarity, out of the quiet kind of love we offer ourselves when no one else will. So now I'm asking you, what truth have you been swallowing for too long? What story is still stuck in your throat, waiting to be told? If this story stirred something in you, let me know in the comments. Drop a 1 if this hit home, or tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know. And hey, if this wasn't your thing, I respect that too. Tell me what didn't land for you and where you're tuning in from. This space is for real people, real stories. So if you believe in truth, growth, and the kind of endings that don't always come with closure, but come with freedom, then subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching. Take care of your story. My name is Sloane, and this is the story of the night my family finally made it clear. I didn't belong. I showed up to my sister's wedding expecting to celebrate, to smile for the cameras, to do what I always did, play the role of the good daughter. But from the moment I stepped inside, something felt off. And then I saw it, my seat. Not at the family table, not even in the main hall, but shoved outside, near the coat racks. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but it wasn't. It was a message that said, "You don't matter." But here's the thing about pushing someone aside for too long. Eventually, they stopped trying to fit in. So I made a choice that night. And what happened after? Well, let's just say, it shocked everyone. I pulled into the parking lot of the venue, my fingers gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. A 5-star ballroom in the heart of Chicago, decked out with twinkling chandeliers, marble floors, and floral arrangements worth more than my rent. Everything about this wedding screamed luxury, everything except for my presence. With a deep breath, I stepped out of my car, smoothing down my navy blue dress. I wasn't here to cause a scene. I wasn't here to make this about me. It was Odessa's day, and I had accepted a long time ago that I wasn't the favorite sibling. I just hadn't expected them to remind me of it in such a public, humiliating way. Inside, a wedding planner with an overly bright smile greeted me at the check-in table. "Name?" she chirped. "Sloane." My voice came out calm, controlled. "Sloane Hathaway." Her smile faltered, just a little. My stomach tightened as she flipped through the seating chart. Then, something flashed across her face. Pity. I knew that look. I hated that look. "Oh, right, here you are," she said, handing me a small place card. You're seated over here." She hesitated, then pointed toward a hallway just outside the grand ballroom. I frowned. "Excuse me?" She forced another smile. "Your table is just outside the main reception area." My eyes darted to the massive seating chart displayed on the stand beside her. Vivian and Harold Hathaway, my parents, were seated at the front, next to the bride and groom. Odessa's closest friends, Dominic's distant relatives, even his co-worker's girlfriend, all had seats inside. My name wasn't there. I turned back to the planner. "There must be a mistake." Her smile tightened. "I'm afraid that's your assigned seat." A slow burn started in my chest. Not even at a distant table inside the ballroom. No, they had shoved me into the hallway as if I were an afterthought. Like a guest they had to accommodate out of obligation, not family. Still, I held on to some ridiculous hope that this was just an oversight. That maybe, just maybe, my own mother hadn't allowed this to happen. I spotted her across the room, standing with Odessa, beaming as she fussed over her dress. My sister looked radiant, perfect, adored, just as she had always been. Odessa caught my gaze, tilted her head, then smirked. That smirk told me everything I needed to know. I forced myself forward. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice light. "Can I talk to you for a second?" Vivian barely spared me a glance. "Oh, darling, now's not the time. Can't you see we're busy?" "It'll only take a second," I said through gritted teeth. She sighed, annoyed but obliging, and stepped aside. Odessa didn't move, of course. She just watched, her smirk growing. "I just checked my seat," I said. "It's in the hallway." Vivian let out a dismissive hum. "Well, we had to prioritize immediate family members at the main tables, Sloane." I blinked. "Immediate family?" "I am immediate family." Vivian let out a forced, airy laugh, as if I'd said something absurd. "Oh, sweetheart, don't be so dramatic." Odessa finally spoke. "Did they mess up your seat?" "Wow, that's unfortunate." Her voice dripped with false sympathy. "You know how chaotic wedding planning can be. So many little details, things get overlooked." Her eyes glowed with amusement. She knew. This wasn't an accident. I turned back to my mother. "Mom, you really think it's okay for me to be seated outside the reception hall, away from everyone?" Vivian sighed again, clearly bored of the conversation. Sloan, don't make a big deal out of this. It's Odessa's special day. Just be grateful you're here. Grateful. The word lodged itself in my throat, bitter and unspoken. Be grateful for being treated like a second-class guest at my own sister's wedding. Be grateful for being discarded, shoved aside, forgotten. I opened my mouth, but Harold, my father, my ever-passive, avoidant father, finally spoke. "It's just seating, sweetheart," he said, not even looking at me. "Let's not ruin the mood." That was it. That was all he had to say. I didn't even bother responding. What was the point? A new voice broke the silence. "That's an interesting arrangement." I turned and found Celeste, Dominic's mother, standing nearby, champagne in hand. Her eyes flickered toward Odessa, then back to me, her expression unreadable. Odessa stiffened slightly. Vivian gave her a rehearsed, gracious smile. "Oh, Celeste, you know how tricky wedding planning can be. We tried our best to accommodate everyone." Celeste hummed, unconvinced. She looked at me just a second too long, as if reading between the lines. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I held her gaze. Odessa looped her arm through my mother's, effortlessly steering the conversation away. "Mom, we should really check on the cake before the reception starts." And just like that, I was dismissed. The ballroom around me was alive with laughter, clinking glasses, and music. A celebration I wasn't truly a part of. I was here, but not welcome. I walked away, my pulse hammering. Not toward my assigned table, not toward the hallway. I reached for the place card in my hand, staring at my own name printed in elegant cursive. I turned it over once, then again, before slowly setting it down on a nearby tray. If they thought I was just going to accept this, they didn't know me at all. I stare at the dimly lit hallway, my back pressed against the cold wall, fingers tightening around the edge of my dress. Laughter, clinking glasses, and distant music spill from the grand ballroom, a world I was never truly a part of. The isolation isn't new. The humiliation, though sharper this time, feels oddly familiar, like an old wound being sliced open again. This wasn't an accident. They wanted me to feel small, insignificant, and damn it, they succeeded. The sting in my chest spreads, not just from this moment, but from years of being the second choice, the afterthought. My mind drifts back, pulling me into the past before I can stop it. 3 years ago, I was back at my parents' house, rummaging through my old bedroom. I hadn't been home in a while, and it showed. Dust gathered in corners, my childhood books untouched, the framed pictures on the wall frozen in time. High school, college, everything before I stopped trying. I wasn't searching for anything in particular, just killing time while my mother finished whatever elaborate dinner she was preparing for Odessa's visit. It was always about Odessa. Then I saw it, a small leather notebook sticking out of my mother's nightstand. I almost didn't open it, but something about the way it was tucked away, as if it were important, as if it mattered, made me reach for it. Inside, pages upon pages of carefully recorded memories, notes, thoughts, about Odessa, her birthdays, her achievements, her struggles, her favorite foods, the names of her childhood friends, even a list of gifts she had loved and ones she had faked liking to be polite. I flipped through more pages, searching for something, anything about me. There was nothing, not a single mention, not a single thought, not a single note about her other daughter. It was like I never existed. I remember standing there, gripping the notebook so tightly my hands ached. A lifetime of doubts suddenly confirmed in ink. When my mother walked in, she barely reacted. "Oh, honey, you've always been independent. I never had to worry about you like I do Odessa." Like that was supposed to be a compliment. Like that was supposed to erase the years of quiet neglect. She had written down everything about Odessa, yet not one single thought about me was worth recording. That was the moment I knew. I had always been alone in this family. The present crashes back around me, the sound of Odessa's laughter slicing through the air like a blade. The weight of that damn notebook presses against my chest, even now. I glance at my assigned table. The insult of it, the pettiness, the cruelty. If they wanted to remind me of my place, message received. I inhale sharply, pushing myself off the wall. If my family had already decided I didn't belong, maybe it was time to act like it. I step toward the ballroom, my mind racing. But before I even reach the doorway, I catch sight of Dominic. He's standing off to the side, near the bar, a glass of whiskey in his hand, but he isn't drinking it. His eyes aren't scanning the crowd with the ease of a man who just married the love of his life. Instead, they're locked on something, or someone, with unmistakable hesitation. And then, they land on me. He exhales, long and slow, before pushing off the counter and walking toward me. Sloane. His voice is even, but there's something underneath it. I raise an eyebrow. Dominic. For a moment, neither of us speaks. The wedding moves on around us. People drinking, laughing, celebrating. A party moving forward while its foundation slowly rots beneath it. Dominic shifts, rolling the whiskey glass in his palm before glancing over his shoulder, toward the far side of the room where Odessa is holding court, basking in her own reflection. When he looks back at me, his jaw tightens. There it is again. That hesitation. That doubt. Sloane, he starts, voice lower this time. I know we haven't talked much, but can I ask you something? I tilt my head. That depends. Is this a polite wedding conversation, or is this something else? He doesn't smile, doesn't even pretend. Something inside me shifts. Dominic sighs, rubbing his temple like he's already regretting this. Does your sister ever talk about me differently when I'm not around? There it is. That single question. That moment where reality peeks through the cracks of whatever illusion Odessa has been feeding him. For a split second, I consider lying. Maybe out of some misplaced sense of protection. Maybe because exposing the truth in a setting like this is a dangerous thing. But then I remember my seat assignment. I remember Odessa's smirk. I remember my mother's dismissal. And I remember who Odessa really is. I glance at his whiskey glass. You should probably take a sip of that first. Dominic tenses. Then he lifts the glass to his lips and downs the whole thing. Dominic, I say carefully, I don't think you know Odessa as well as you think you do. His jaw tightens. I was afraid of that. Silence stretches between us, thick and suffocating. She's been acting different, he finally says, his voice quieter now, edged with something close to frustration. Controlling. There are things she doesn't want me to see. My stomach twists, because of course there are. Before I can respond, Celeste appears. She's walking toward us, her expression unreadable, but her eyes are sharp, calculating. Odessa's new mother-in-law, the only woman in this room with more power than she has. Celeste stops in front of Dominic, her gaze flicking toward me for just a second before settling on him. Darling, she says smoothly, I believe you should see this. Then she holds out her phone. Dominic takes it hesitantly, scrolling down, his face shifting from confusion to realization to something far, far worse. Odessa's text messages, to her friends, to her stylist, to people who have no business knowing what's in her heart, because what's in her heart is cold and rotten. The messages are brutal, petty, cruel. Odessa trashing Celeste, calling her overbearing, controlling, a rich old woman who just needs to write the checks and stay out of her life. Odessa talking about Dominic, how she's training him to be the husband she needs, how he'll do whatever she wants because he's so desperate to prove he's better than his dad. And then, the worst one, Odessa laughing about how easy this marriage will be. Because Dominic's family has money, and all she has to do is play her part until she doesn't have to anymore. Dominic's hand clenches around the phone. Celeste watches him carefully. Your wife-to-be doesn't just dislike me, Dominic. She pauses, voice calm but sharp as glass. She's been planning to control you since day one. Dominic sways slightly, as if the floor beneath him has just cracked open. I say nothing. Because this isn't my moment. This is his. I just watch as his expression shifts from doubt to anger. The wedding may be happening, but the foundation beneath it is already cracking. The wedding may still be in motion, but behind closed doors, the family meeting that follows will change everything. I follow the movement of bodies as we're ushered into a private lounge. The air is heavy, thick with the kind of tension that makes your skin itch. Odessa is in the center of it all, perfectly composed, or at least pretending to be. Celeste stands near the entrance, arms crossed, lips pressed together in an unreadable line. Dominic lingers by the bar, his whiskey untouched, his shoulders rigid. Vivienne, of course, is already speaking, already smoothing, already making excuses. "This is all just a misunderstanding," she says, offering a thin, forced smile. "Emotions are high. It's a wedding after all. Let's not let a little family tension—" Celeste cuts her off. "Family tension?" she echoes, eyes narrowing. "Vivienne, this isn't tension. This is a revelation." Odessa lets out a mocking scoff, arms crossing over her designer gown. "You've seriously dragged us in here for this?" She turns toward Dominic, voice dripping in sugar. "Baby, tell me you don't actually believe this nonsense." Dominic doesn't answer. He doesn't even look at her. Vivienne reaches for his arm, her voice softer now. "Dominic, sweetheart, you have to understand. Odessa has been under a lot of stress. Planning a wedding is exhausting. People say things they don't mean." Celeste's lips curl. Funny, because she seemed to mean every word when she talked about controlling him. Odessa's jaw tightens, but before she can fire back, Harold speaks, and the entire room stills. "Vivienne, stop." The words are quiet, but they land like a gunshot. My mother turns, blinking, as if surprised to be interrupted. My father is not a man who raises his voice, not a man who intervenes. But tonight, something shifts. "You've protected Odessa her entire life," he says, his voice tired, weighted with something I can't place. "And look what it's turned her into." Odessa gasps, genuine shock flashing across her face. "Dad? You're taking her side?" Harold ignores her, turning to me instead. "Sloane has been right all along." The words ring in my ears. My breath catches. My mother physically recoils. For the first time in my life, my father is choosing me. Vivienne shakes her head, laughing nervously, as if this is some kind of mistake. "Harold, don't be ridiculous. Odessa is a liar." Dominic speaks before he even realizes it. His voice is raw, like he's just now waking up to the fact that he's been sleeping next to a stranger. Odessa pales. "Excuse me?" I take a slow step forward, locking eyes with my mother. I need her to understand this moment. I need her to feel the weight of it. "If you keep covering for her," I say quietly, "you will lose more than just me, Mom." For the first time, Vivienne falters. Odessa sees it, and she panics. Her voice sharpens, desperation creeping in. "You're all turning against me because of her?" Celeste lets out a slow breath, taking a sip of her drink before delivering the final blow. "We're turning against you because we finally see you for what you are." Odessa physically flinches, her breath shuddering, eyes darting from face to face. She has always been in control, until now. A wounded animal is the most dangerous kind, and Odessa has no intention of going down quietly. The air in the private lounge is suffocating, charged with something electric, something sharp. No one moves, no one speaks, as if any sudden motion might detonate the tension coiling in the room. Odessa stands rigid, her breath shallow, her fingers clutching the fabric of her gown so tightly that the seams strain. She's losing control, and she knows it. Vivienne's grip on her daughter's arm is firm, her voice low but desperate. "Odessa, stop!" But Odessa doesn't stop. She can't. She won't. Across the room, Dominic hasn't said a word. His silence is heavier than any accusation, a weight pressing down on Odessa's carefully built world. I glance at him, the man who just pledged forever to my sister, and I see the doubt in his eyes. More than doubt, something colder, disgust. A flicker of satisfaction sparks in my chest, but I bury it. This isn't over, not yet. Odessa exhales sharply, then turns to me, eyes narrowed. You think you're so smart, don't you? Her voice is quiet, controlled, but there's a tremor beneath it. I meet her gaze. I don't have to think, Odessa, I know. Her lips curl, but it's not a smile. It's something darker, more brittle. You've always been jealous of me. The accusation is so absurd, so predictable, that I almost laugh, almost. Instead, I tilt my head. Jealous? Of what? The fact that you have to manipulate and lie just to make people stay in your orbit? I gesture to Dominic, to Celeste, to our own parents. Look around, Odessa. Your world is shrinking. Her jaw clenches. And then I go for the kill. You played your game well, I say, voice measured even. But you forgot one thing. I know who you really are. Odessa flinches. It's subtle, but it's there. Vivian sucks in a sharp breath. She knows I'm not bluffing. I step forward, my voice soft but unwavering. I know about the money, the texts, the things you've said about your own husband. I glance at Dominic. The things you've said about his family. Dominic stiffens. Odessa's face drains of color. And then, for the first time in her life, my mother pleads with me. Vivian turns, eyes wide, hands shaking. Sloane, she whispers. She's still your sister. You don't have to do this. A beat of silence. And for a split second, a fraction of a moment, I hesitate. Not because I feel sorry for Odessa, but because my mother has never looked at me like this before. Like she needs me, like she's afraid. But the hesitation is fleeting. Because I know if the roles were reversed, Odessa wouldn't hesitate. And she proves it when she snaps. You're all turning against me because of her? Odessa's voice cracks, sharp and raw, her hands trembling at her sides. She's always been bitter, always hated me, and now you're going to believe her over your own daughter? Celeste exhales slowly, lifting her glass to her lips before delivering the final blow. We're turning against you because we finally see you for what you are. The words hit like a slap. Odessa's mouth opens, then closes. She looks at Dominic, her last chance at control. Her voice shakes as she reaches for him. You don't believe them, do you? Dominic doesn't answer. That silence? It's her death sentence. Odessa's breathing hitches, her panic tangible now. And then, she lunges forward, her expression twisted with fury. But this time, I'm not backing down. Odessa's hand swings toward me, fast and reckless, but I barely flinch. I don't have to move. I don't have to cower. Because the difference between us is clear now. I'm not afraid anymore. Odessa is the one losing control, and everyone in this room knows it. Her palm cuts through the air, a flash of anger, of desperation. But before it connects, Celeste steps between us. Odessa collides with her instead, stumbling back, gasping. The sheer force of her own reckless movement sends her off balance, right into the entrance of the ballroom. And now there's no hiding. The music halts, conversations die. Every guest in the reception turns toward the spectacle unfolding at the entrance. Odessa. The perfect bride, the golden child, the one who always controlled the narrative, stands there, disheveled, breathless, her rage twisting her features into something unrecognizable. She blinks, realizing too late that this isn't a private fight anymore. It's a public disaster. A murmur spreads through the ballroom. Guests whisper. Eyes widen. Some exchange glances, others stare outright. Dominic is still standing near the bar, silent, watching. Just watching. Odessa spins toward him, frantic. You're my husband! Her voice shakes, high and thin. You have to stand by me! Dominic exhales slowly. The exhaustion on his face is unmistakable. I don't think I ever really knew you. The words land like a final nail in her coffin. Odessa staggers, her breath hitching, shaking her head violently. Number no, you don't mean that. You love me. But Dominic's eyes are empty now. Not angry, not even disappointed. Just done. Then, without another word, he reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out a small envelope. My breath catches. I already know what it is. Odessa does too. Her face drains of color. What? What is that? Dominic doesn't blink. Annulment papers. A collective gasp rips through the guests. Even I feel the weight of it, the finality, the death of the perfect image she spent years curating. Odessa's hands tremble as she stares at the envelope. You had this prepared? Celeste steps forward, arms crossed, voice cold. Of course he did. Odessa's lips part, but no words come out. And then Celeste delivers the final blow. You were never going to be a part of this family. Odessa staggers back, her world unraveling. But she isn't done yet. Odessa may have lost her marriage, but she still has one weapon left. Revenge. Her chest rises and falls in quick, uneven breaths, her perfectly curled hair slightly out of place, her hands trembling at her sides. But this isn't over. Not for her. She refuses to let it be. She turns sharply to our mother. Mom! She pleads, her voice softer now, laced with just the right amount of vulnerability. You know this isn't true. You know they're trying to ruin me. Vivian hesitates. Of course she does. She has spent a lifetime cleaning up Odessa's messes, smoothing over her mistakes, making excuses. My mother's lips part, her eyes darting between her two daughters, the one she's always protected and the one she's always dismissed. Odessa! She starts, voice uncertain. Odessa seizes the moment. She grips Vivian's hand, pressing it against her chest like some kind of dramatic performance. Mom, you know me. You know I love Dominic. I would never. Stop. The voice is cold. Final. Dominic. He's holding something in his hand, a stack of papers stapled at the top. His face is unreadable, but his grip is tight. Odessa freezes. Celeste steps forward, her expression razor-sharp. Go on, Dominic, she says smoothly. Read it. Dominic's jaw clenches. Then, in a voice eerily calm, he begins. Odessa Hathaway filed an inquiry with a divorce attorney 1 month before the wedding. A sharp, collective gasp rips through the guests still lingering in the ballroom. I feel my stomach drop, not out of shock, but because even I didn't expect it to be this bad. Dominic doesn't stop. You were planning to leave me, he says, each word slow, deliberate, cutting. The second you got access to my money. The paper in his hands trembles slightly, but his voice doesn't waver. Odessa pales. That's not. Celeste lets out a low, unimpressed laugh. Oh, sweetheart, don't even try. She tilts her head. That's a legal document. You know, the kind that doesn't lie. Odessa's confidence shatters. The room is spinning out of her control, slipping through her fingers like sand. Dominic takes a step closer. Was anything ever real, Odessa? His voice is raw, not angry, just exhausted. Did you ever love me? Or was I just another accessory for you to show off? Odessa's lips quiver. Her eyes dart around the room, searching for someone, anyone, to back her up. And then, as if on pure survival instinct, she spins toward me. This is all your fault, she snaps, her voice rising, cracking. You've always been jealous of me. There it is. The same tired accusation. But this time, it doesn't land. Because for the first time, I don't care. I don't rise to the bait. I don't argue. I don't give her what she wants. I simply look at her and say, No, Odessa. This isn't my fault. She flinches. This is who you've always been. Her breath hitches. I step forward. I don't raise my voice. I don't have to. You manipulate. You lie. You take and take and take, and when things go wrong, you blame everyone but yourself. Vivian gasps softly, as if hearing the truth for the first time. Odessa shakes her head violently. No, that's not. Mom, tell her she's wrong. But Vivian doesn't move. She just stares. And for Odessa, that silence is worse than any insult. She stumbles back, realization dawning. She is lost. Odessa looks around the room, seeking someone to take her side. But for the first time in her life, no one does. As the weight of her actions settles in, Odessa realizes there is only one thing left to do: disappear. But first, she fights. Her breath is uneven, her face pale beneath the ballroom lights. She looks around the room, scanning for someone. Anyone. To stand by her side. For the first time in her life, no one does. The guests stare in stunned silence. Some whisper behind raised hands. Some avoid eye contact altogether. Even Vivian, her greatest defender, her most loyal enabler, says nothing. Odessa stumbles back, her manicured nails digging into her palms. Then, slowly, she laughs. It's bitter, hollow. Not the laugh of a woman who's won, but of someone who refuses to believe she's lost. "You all think you're better than me?" She sneers, her voice unsteady. "Just wait. None of you will be anything without me." No one reacts. No one rushes to tell her she's wrong. She grits her teeth, shaking her head, as if trying to will the moment into something else. And then, our eyes meet. I step forward. Not out of pity, not out of cruelty, but because I need her to hear this. For the first time, Odessa looks small. "You spent your whole life making sure I felt invisible," I say, my voice steady, unwavering. "But look around, Odessa." I watch as her throat bobs, as her breath hitches. "You're the one no one sees anymore." She blinks, and for a split second, something in her cracks. Then, just as quickly, she shoves it down. She steps back, shaking her head, laughing again. But there's nothing behind it. No. You don't get to do this," she spits. "You don't get to be the hero in this story." I exhale slowly. She still doesn't understand. "This isn't a story, Odessa. This is just the truth." Her mouth opens, but nothing comes out. She turns to our mother. Vivian's arms are wrapped around herself, her lips slightly parted, her expression shattered. Tears shine in her eyes. Not for Odessa, not for me. For what she allowed to happen, for what she let Odessa become. She stares at me, really looks at me, for the first time in years. And I know she sees it now, the damage, the choices, the consequences. But it's too late. I won't stay to watch the aftermath. I take a breath, shoulders back, and turn toward the exit. No dramatic speech, no second glance, just a quiet, final decision. I walk out, stepping through the heavy ballroom doors into the crisp night air. The cold fills my lungs, sharp and cleansing. And as I stand there, staring at the city lights stretching out beyond the courtyard, I feel it. A new beginning waits beyond the doors. The past may still linger, but I've finally learned that not all endings need closure. It's been a week since the wedding, a week since I walked out and left them all standing there, staring, speechless, unsure what to do without me playing my role. The fallout came fast. I glance at my phone, scrolling through the missed calls and unread messages. Most of them from my mother. Some apologetic, some defensive. Vivian Hathaway doesn't know how to lose. She doesn't know how to navigate a world where I'm not desperately seeking her approval. Odessa, meanwhile? Silent. No social media posts, no cryptic captions, no carefully curated illusions of perfection. She disappeared from public view the way a fallen queen disappears from history. And the family group chat? Still active, still buzzing with updates, jokes, inside references. Just without me. I should feel hurt. I should feel the sting of exclusion. But I don't. For the first time, I don't need to be part of something that never truly included me to begin with. The call comes later that evening. I let it ring twice before answering. Vivian's voice is hesitant. "I know I've made mistakes," she says, as if it's that simple. I say nothing. She exhales shakily. I don't know how to fix this." I close my eyes, leaning back against my couch. There's nothing to fix. Some wounds don't heal, some shouldn't. But I don't say that. I don't say anything. She waits, like she's hoping I'll hand her a script, tell her how to make this all go away. But I won't. And eventually, she realizes it. I just wanted you to know, she murmurs, before the line goes dead. Later that night, I get another message. Not a voicemail this time, not a plea. An invitation, dinner. A quiet, unspoken truce. For the first time, I consider saying no. Not out of anger, not out of resentment, but because I don't need their validation anymore. I stare at the message, at the weight of it, and I realize something. This isn't about them choosing me anymore. It's about me choosing myself. I walk through my apartment, stopping by the small bookshelf near the window. Old photographs sit there, framed moments of a life I once wanted so badly to belong to. I pick one up, a Christmas photo from years ago. Odessa front and center, radiant as always. Vivian beside her, hand on her shoulder. And me? On the edge of the frame, like an afterthought. I set it down, and I don't pick it up again. Instead, I step toward the window, breathing in the stillness of the night. The city stretches out before me, endless, full of possibilities. And for the first time, I feel it. Freedom. Before we end this story, let me leave you with something important. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Family isn't about blood, it's about respect. About knowing your worth. About refusing to beg for a seat at a table that was never meant for you. For too long, I believed I had to earn love. That if I worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, sacrificed enough, eventually they'd see me. They'd choose me. But the truth? Sometimes the best thing you can do, the strongest thing you can do, is walk away. Not every story needs closure. Not every wound heals with an apology. And that's okay. Because the real healing, the real power, that comes when you choose yourself. So let me ask you, have you ever had to walk away from something or someone to protect your own peace? Have you ever realized that staying would cost you more than leaving ever could? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story resonated with you. Or tell me, where are you watching from? I love hearing your stories, your experiences. And if you want more stories like this, real, raw, and filled with lessons we all need, hit that subscribe button. Because trust me, there's more to come. Thank you for watching, and remember, choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival.